This week, the United Nations Security Council is set to meet over the decision by the global body's top court calling for Israel to prevent genocidal acts in Gaza. The Secretary General of the United Nations this morning calling on countries to continue funding the main agency providing aid in Gaza. This, of course, following an investigation into several staffers allegedly involved in the October 7th attack. Now, on Saturday, mediators from Arab nations drafted a hostage release ceasefire proposal that they say would end the Israel-Hamas war. Let's bring in NewsNation national security contributor Tracy Walder. Tracy, good morning.
Thank you so much for having me, Hannah, and congratulations on the new show.
Thank you so much. So there's a yet-to-be-signed ceasefire deal. We hear it will play out in 2 phases. What will that look like?
So basically what's going to happen is Director Burns from the CIA, and that's really critical to remember. We are not really engaging in diplomatic talks because the reality is Hamas, it's not its own nation state. So all of this is occurring really through the head intelligence agencies. And I think those first round of talks are really going to focus on how and when and how many hostages are going to be released. I think the next portion of that talks is really going to be, what does a ceasefire look like? How long is the ceasefire going to last? And what is next for the Gaza area?
I want to read something that Netanyahu has said time and time again, saying there is no substitute for total victory. Does that sentiment complicate these negotiations?
In short, 100% it does, because the problem is Hamas is not going to come to the table and say, yes, that's not a problem. We are happy to exist, in sort of this one state solution, because really that's what he's insinuating there. And so it really complicates things. I would imagine that Director Burns is not pleased coming to Europe to negotiate this ahead of the statement, because I fully believe that the hostages, we cannot have the safe return of the hostages without diplomacy. A full military action, which is another thing he's really advocating for there, really puts in jeopardy the lives of the hostages.
Tracy, I'm glad you mentioned CIA Director William Burns. Like you mentioned, he's heading overseas to meet with Qatar's foreign minister to talk about a few things. What is the likelihood here that he will have a deal done within the week?
That's a great question. I think the likelihood is rather high. I would give it a B letter, if that makes any sense. Because the reality is he has done this. This is his 4th time going over there, and he has engaged in these talks before and has been successful. I also think you have a lot of the Arab nations who are coming to the table also with sort of their own plans in place. And so I think when you have him buying in as well as the buy-in from those Arab nations, I actually think that's pretty critical and a really good sign.
Can we quickly talk about the UN staffers that were fired from UNRWA in Gaza? I believe 8 people were fired out of 12. Your thoughts on that?
So the U.S. has paused its funding to them. We are the largest donor. We give them $344 million to UNRWA last year, as of 2022. So that's pretty critical that we have paused our funding. However, if they have been terminated, I do think that an investigation does need to take place to see how prolific this is. We have to remember, between 2012 and 2014, the UN did find that UNRWA had put weapons into some of their schools in Gaza and was using them against Israel. So there is an established sort of record of this. I do believe an investigation needs to take place. However, when you have the ICJ's really recent ruling that Israel needs to be careful about civilian infrastructure, this really complicates this matter and this ruling when you have a situation like this.
And I wanted to correct my number. 9 out of 12 staffers were fired. Tracy, we really appreciate your insight here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.